Business leaders and intellectual business community, we come to the final segment of our discussion today. Are you having trouble keeping your operations focused? Which we take from Harvard Business Review, September 2009. And still with us, Ahmeer Udin, the Operation Director of Allianz Indonesia. Ahmeer, I have questions for you about this. How do you manage the interactions and how you make the rules of sharing? For example, let's say taking the insurance, taking the insurance business. Maybe previously you have two lawyers backing up of each teams, yeah. But now maybe you think that one lawyer is enough to share to both teams, right? How do you set the criteria of what are the functions you can combine and what are the functions you cannot combine because you are afraid that it will affect the effectiveness in terms of the customer experience will becomes worse or whatever, but you can get those feedback after you decide whether you combine or not, right?
That's right.
I mean, those things are evaluation. You cannot get the evaluation before you act something. But before you act something, you have to have a criteria to judge up to what we have to combine, up to what we still let it to be specialized. How do you use a criteria for this?
I think that's a very valid question because at the end of the day, it's asking, where do you need to keep the duplication? Right. Where, because and how do you establish that at the outset before knowing the result? I think the way we've handled this in Allianz is, first of all, whenever this type of situation is occurring, you have two lawyers and you're deciding to go with one. Of course, it's a very sensitive issue from an HR perspective. And the way we've managed that is that wherever we have decided we will need to centralize functions, we have initially either brought teams together at the first step and then analyzed the workload, or what we have done is where it's clear that we have a duplication, we have tried to find lateral roles for the other areas. So from the sensitivity, it was a difficult exercise, I must say, and making certain areas of the organization understand that. At the end of the day, the way we are looking at it is the technical aspect. The two types of insurance that we're dealing with and the many different types of product lines that we have can be very technical, and there are some areas where clearly you cannot eliminate duplication. You know, a specialist on a life side when dealing with claims has no idea what it's like to pay a claim for a factory or a car or things like that. So where these technical specialized areas are concerned, we have made a conscious decision that these have to be kept within the areas. Now, of course, there are other areas which are more things like data entry, support services, processing, which is less technically specific, which can be brought together. Of course, a lot of training is required, a lot of cross-training, being able to understand various types of product lines, types of businesses, and this is very important. So what we've done is we have provided very clear guidelines, manuals, procedures, so that our people in the operations and the processing side are able to handle whatever case turns up on their desk. But also it has to be managed very closely with the distribution of the workload, and that is brought up to our middle management level. So the workload coming in has to be distributed in accordance with the specialization or the level of knowledge or training that has been given to our staff, and we handle this through distribution programs.
So along this, let's say 1 year, how much saving have you created by combining functions?
I would say it's probably still early to give you an exact answer. But we have looked at least, and we have targeted at least a 20% saving
20%
on our expense side
of the unification
yes.
efforts, right?
Yes.
And while you unified some functions,
Yes.
some process, and while this previously was specialized process, that means this process is shared by two functions, by two specialized teams,
right?
And there are times where there are conflicts between these two teams, which team should be served first.
Absolutely.
How do you decide when there was a conflict? How do you decide, what are the criteria to decide which team should be first served?
So it's a prioritization issue
Right.
at the end of the day. How do we share our resources? How do we share our assets so that as an organization we get the maximum value out of it? Of course, this has to be very clearly communicated to all the areas that are sharing any service. We do have a central function which looks at the cost value from a cost benefit point of view when any resource is required by more than one area. Okay, and that's a very transparent exercise. Okay, we have to look at unless it is critical in a particular area, wherever the cost benefit is higher, it will be prioritized on that basis to that respective area. Now, of course, this works very closely in tandem with communication to the other, because once you agree to put a resource in one direction, how do you communicate it and how do you make the other area understand? That has to be done very carefully, and that's probably the more difficult part of this exercise, because the financial calculation on the cost benefit is relatively easy as long as it's done accurately, but the communication part is really where the tricky or the difficulty comes in. And again, through open communication across all levels of the organization and a clear top-down understanding that this will be the criteria that we use for prioritizing our resources is there, and at the end of the day, as long as it's understood, we found that it can work. Okay. At the same time, as I said, if there are any critical areas, then we do make a decision whether to split or bring in additional resources when they are needed at a certain time.
But this, this issue of priorities of serving which teams first is a daily,
or ongoing
daily problem, right?
Ongoing.
So you have to have a clear criteria so that it will not, and every time coming up to you, Ahmeer, which one is first?
And the way we manage it is basically through projects. Okay, so we do everything is managed as a project through centralized project management, and that is really the one which is looking at identifying prioritizations, especially the different project priorities. Where does the resource go first? And I think the classic example is IT. Everyone always wants IT to come and do something for them.
Underwriting department, for example.
Underwriting is business at the end of the day. We have to do it. But IT and shared services, these different areas need them, and we really have to manage our resources from a financial point of view. Right.
So your main criteria is the cost benefit. That
primary
comes first as the screening.
Of course,
there are other things
in the background. If it's regulatory, if it's required, that will always be number one.
Okay, they can appeal if there are other factors including in.
But other than that, if we are looking at efficiency, effectiveness, or economies of scale, we have to prioritize based on cost factors.
All right, thank you very much, Ahmeer. So, business leaders and intellectual business community, because of time, we have to summarize this discussion. And this discussion is taken from the Harvard Business Review article, September 2009, which titled, "Are you having trouble keeping your operations focused?" This title means that are you having trouble to have your operations, all your operations specialized? Of course, you will have problem because then you have a lot of duplications in functions. Duplication in function means cost for you, and you have to think of which cost can be combined, can create the economies of scale that adds to your profits directly. Because while sales is not certain, cutting costs is a certain way to improve your profit. But then if you cut too much in specializations, you may cut into your own flesh or your own bones, that you will kill yourself in the long term. So this is always the daily problem, dilemmatic decisions that has to be faced by operation directors like Ahmeer. So we learn a lot from Ahmeer how Allianz keeping its focus on effectiveness first, and then trying to improve the efficiency. And when it comes to the risk, whether this efficiency can affect the effectiveness, I think we better be careful. And from Allianz case, we learned that there are sometimes we make further studies by keeping these operations runs together for a while, and then we analyze whether these functions can be combined up to which points. Yeah, we can put some times for further evaluation and studies before we taking risk too much on the effectiveness. I think we learned a lot from good examples of Allianz, and this case and this experience can be also shared by you, by any companies, because I believe in any company there are always questions of whether we have to have specialized teams or we better share everything. Yeah. Sharing too much also not good, because you are not having precisions, and specializing too much is not good because it's taking up the cost of the applications. And I think while we are looking for more effectiveness, the efficiency will determine whether we are better than our competitors or not, because at the end price is also important for customer to decide whether they like your products or not. I am Dr. Bayu Prawirahi, Executive Director, Intellectual Business Community. Let's see each other again in the next CEO reference program. Thank you.